Welcome to my True Crime channel. This is my very first video, and I'm excited to share some of the most gripping and haunting crime stories with you. Here, we'll dig into cases that challenge what we think about innocence, guilt, and justice. Stories that are as disturbing as they are fascinating. If you love true crime and want to explore the mysteries behind these dark events, you're in the right place. Today, we're starting with a case that shocked the nation. The chilling story of Mary Bell, an 11-year-old girl accused of murder. The chilling story of Mary Bell, an 11-year-old killer. Introduction. In the summer of 1968, the city of Newcastle, England, was thrust into the center of a horrifying mystery. Two young boys had been found dead within weeks of each other. The police, community, and nation were stunned to discover that the prime suspect wasn't a man lurking in the shadows or a known criminal. It was an 11-year-old girl named Mary Bell. This case would go on to become one of the most disturbing and debated child crime stories in modern British history. It raised harrowing questions about childhood innocence, criminal responsibility, and whether evil can be born or if it is made. Early life of Mary Bell. Mary Flora Bell was born on May 26, 1957, in Newcastle upon Tyne. Her early childhood was nothing short of a nightmare. Her mother, Betty Bell, was only 17 years old at the time and worked as a sex worker. Family members and neighbors described Betty as abusive, erratic, and mentally unstable. Betty reportedly attempted to give Mary away multiple times, once pushing her into the arms of a stranger outside an adoption clinic. Mary's biological father remains unknown, but she was later raised by Billy Bell, a known petty criminal and alcoholic who frequently got into trouble with the law. Mary grew up in the Scotswood area, a crime-ridden and impoverished part of Newcastle. The environment was marked by violence, unemployment, and neglect, with children often left to their own devices. From a young age, Mary was subjected to unimaginable trauma. Reports suggest Betty may have forced Mary to engage in sex acts with her clients as early as 4 years old. Mary was a chronic bedwetter and was reportedly punished by having her face shoved into the soiled mattress. Family members also alleged that Betty attempted to kill Mary on more than one occasion through overdoses and neglect. Mary's behavior began to reflect her chaotic upbringing. Teachers and peers described her as withdrawn, manipulative, and prone to sudden outbursts of violence. She often bullied other children and was known to lie compulsively. Mary formed a close friendship with Norma Bell, a slightly older girl from the neighborhood who was considered less intelligent and more easily influenced. Though they shared a last name, they were not related. The pair were frequently seen together, and Mary appeared to dominate the relationship. Norma often followed Mary's lead, participating in increasingly aggressive and unsettling behavior. Prelude to tragedy. In May 1968, several troubling incidents occurred that suggested something more serious was brewing. On May 11, a 3-year-old boy was found bleeding from the head after reportedly falling from a ledge. Mary and Norma claimed they found him, but witnesses later suggested Mary had pushed him. The next day, May 12, Mary was accused of attacking 3 girls in a sandpit, attempting to strangle them and shove sand into their mouths. One of the girls later recalled how Mary gripped her neck and stuffed sand down her throat, while Norma stood by, seemingly frightened. First death, Martin Brown. On May 25, 1968, 4-year-old Martin Brown was found dead in an abandoned house on St. Margaret's Road. The house was a known play area for local children. Martin's body showed no obvious signs of trauma, but blood and saliva were visible around his mouth. Nearby, a bottle of aspirin lay discarded. Initially, authorities believed his death was accidental, perhaps a case of poisoning or a fall. No one suspected murder, and the case was closed without any charges. However, the truth would soon unravel. The nursery break-in. 2 days after Martin's death, a local nursery was broken into and vandalized. Nothing was stolen, but disturbing notes were left behind. Written in crude handwriting, riddled with spelling errors, the notes made chilling claims. "We did murder Martin Brown. I murder so that I may come back." Police chalked it up to a childish prank, given the juvenile handwriting, and did not take the threats seriously. Escalation. Brian Howe. On July 31, 1968, 3-year-old Brian Howe disappeared while playing near his home. That evening, his body was found in a nearby wasteland. Unlike Martin, Brian had clearly been murdered. He had been strangled, and his body bore multiple superficial cuts. The letter M had been carved into his stomach with a razor blade. Clumps of his hair had been cut, and his genitals had been mutilated. Investigators quickly determined that very little force had been used in the killing, leading them to believe the killer might also be a child. Mary and Norma were interviewed multiple times. Their stories were inconsistent and evasive. Detectives noticed Mary seemed to treat the whole situation like a game, often smiling and giggling during questioning. Norma eventually cracked. In early August, she confessed that Mary had taken her to see Brian's body and admitted to the murder. She claimed Mary had enjoyed the act and even described the way she touched Brian's lips after his death. Mary was arrested shortly after and interrogated. She tried to blame Norma, even fabricating a story about witnessing a different boy at the scene with a pair of scissors, a detail only the killer could have known, since such scissors were found near Brian's body, but never publicly disclosed. Further evidence mounted. Gray fibers from Mary's clothing were found on both victims. Police also discovered a chilling drawing in one of Mary's school books that appeared to depict Martin Brown's death, complete with a labeled pill bottle. Mary and Norma were tried at the Newcastle Assizes in December 1968. The courtroom was gripped by the surreal nature of the case. Two young girls, barely teenagers, accused of horrific murders. Mary remained cold and unemotional throughout the proceedings, answering questions sharply and showing no remorse. Norma, in contrast, was visibly terrified, weeping throughout the trial. Psychiatrists concluded that Mary displayed classic signs of psychopathy. On December 17, the jury found Mary guilty of manslaughter on the grounds of diminished responsibility. Norma was acquitted, deemed to have been manipulated. Mary was sentenced to be detained at Her Majesty's pleasure, a flexible sentence with no fixed release date. Life after conviction. Mary spent the next several years in a series of facilities, including Red Bank Secure Unit. It was a boys-only institution that converted to accommodate her. Though she was initially well-behaved, she escaped briefly in 1977 at age 20 to meet a man. She was caught and returned shortly after. In 1980, at the age of 23, Mary Bell was released from prison and granted anonymity. She would later have a daughter whose identity was also protected under law. When the public discovered her location years later, Mary and her daughter were forced into hiding. In 2003, a court granted her lifelong anonymity, extending it to her child and later her grandchild. Mary Bell's case remains one of the most disturbing examples of child homicide. It forces society to grapple with questions we still struggle to answer. Can a child be truly evil? Can they be held responsible for crimes committed under the weight of relentless trauma and abuse? While many believe she deserved a second chance, others argue that the punishment did not fit the crime. Mary Bell took the lives of two innocent children, and yet she was released, protected, and given an opportunity to start anew. This case continues to haunt Britain decades later, not just because of what Mary did, but because it challenges the very boundaries of innocence, guilt, and redemption.